Hi, I'm Kristen from Eeks Office Solutions. Today I'm going to take you through some of the basic print options for your Ricoh copier. We're going to start with this Word document that I've brought up on the screen. I've already gone to File and Print, and you can see that I've chosen the Ricoh IMC 3500 as my printer. I have a printer properties button in this instance. Sometimes you may see a button that says Preferences instead, and depending on what you're using for an application, it may be located either off to the side or in a slightly different place. The settings, once you get in, will always be the same. We'll go ahead and click Print Properties here. That'll bring up our printer choices. Once we get in here, we can choose all of the basic setup options for our job. You'll notice that we have presets right down the middle of this screen here. And these are really nice and easy to manage from the Ricoh environment. So you'll see I've got my factory built-in settings, but I can also make my own. I'll talk about those again in just a few minutes after we've made some settings changes. Notice on the left that you also have a preview of your document as it exists so far. Up at the very top is one of the most important things we'll talk about today because it enables us to be a lot more efficient in workgroup style settings. When we choose a job type, we can choose to send our print job to the Ricoh copier and have it hold there until we approach the machine and are actually ready to print it out. This is really important because in a lot of our offices these days, we're cutting down on the number of individual desktop printers that we use, and we're aggregating print jobs to a device like this one. That means if I have 5 or 10 or 15 people all using this same device and really only one output area for my print jobs, copy jobs, fax jobs, I may have a lot of confusion resulting. To cut down on some of that, it is helpful to be able to choose a held print style job. Now I have a couple of options in here. There's quite a lot going on, so don't be intimidated by this. These are all very close to being the same thing. So we'll talk about the most important ones. As far as I'm concerned, those are locked print and hold print. With locked print, I have a details button that I'm going to choose after I've selected it from the drop-down menu. This is going to allow me to either create a user ID or I can just use the one from my computer. So this is my Windows login name that will populate here, or if I want to, I can put in my own ID. I'm going to do that right now because I'd like to show you what that does when I get over to the Ricoh copier to release this. I think I just spelled my own name incorrectly. We'll just pretend. Down here in our password area, you can see that we need to have 4 to 8 digits. We're just going to make this 1, 2, 3, 4 to keep things simple. We'll click OK here. When I go ahead and print this job, which I'm going to go ahead and do right now, it will go over to the copier and it will wait there. So we're just going to do 1 page of this. I'm going to hit print. We're printing to this copier here in front of me, and you'll see that my blue light at the top will activate, but nothing is actually going to print out yet. I'm going to come down onto the panel. I'm going to choose the Quick Print Release button. Notice that my Quick Print Release button is named Kristen because that's what I entered for my username in the interface of my print driver. When I click on this button, it prompts me to put in the password, which I created, my very super secret password, 1234. I'm going to hit done and OK. And now I'll be able to access my print job. I'm going to show you in just a moment if your job is not confidential, we can send it without the password as well. I can select my job here, or notice that I can unselect or select all of the jobs if I have multiples. Because again, a convenience of this feature is to be able to print all the jobs you need to release and then walk up and actually print them out all at the same time when you're there to take them away with you. So once I select my job, I can go to Print Settings here. Keep in mind, any print settings that you made back at your desk in the print driver will still retain here, so you don't need to make them again. But if there's something you forgot to set, you can do it on the fly right now. When I hit print, my job goes ahead and prints out, and then it automatically deletes. So there's no need for me to maintain that printer queue after the fact. And now my job is ready to go, and you'll notice that in my Quick Print Release, I no longer even have a folder. We'll go back to our print driver settings here. This is a nice feature because all of these settings are created on the fly. You don't have to pre-create folders or have anything set up in advance in order to use this feature. You don't need any administrator access either, which is also pretty handy. So we'll go back into the printer properties. We'll look now right below job print, or locked print rather, at the hold print. This is the same function. The only difference is you don't have to have a password on it. So when I click my details, you'll notice again, I can either use the Windows login ID or I can create my own. Either way, this is the name under which that folder will be registered on the copier. And I can put in a file name for this if I'd like to. The reason that there's a file name available here is twofold. First, it helps you to discern jobs from one another if you send multiple jobs over during the course of a day. But also, if you wanted to create a separate folder for things like applications, brochures, fax cover sheets, you could name those appropriately and leave them set on the copier for quite a long period of time. In that instance, you might want to make your user ID something like forms. Anytime you wanted to send additional documents to that same folder, you simply put in exactly that same name for the user ID, and they'll show up in that same folder for you. Very simple. This is a complex function, and there are many other ways that we can configure it using both the Quick Print Release and the document server that we looked at in a previous video. If you'd like help with this, or if it doesn't make complete sense yet, please give us a call. We'd be happy to come out and do some further and deeper training for you on this subject. We'll go back to the go ahead and normal print, and we'll come down into the other basic settings here. So our document size, pretty self-explanatory. If this is not something you're customizing, you really don't need to select anything here. However, if I'd like to take my document that happens to be letter in size in its digital original, and I'd like to print it on a larger size paper, I can simply select that here. And as long as I have that 11 by 17 paper, or whatever size I've chosen here, loaded in the copier, it'll go ahead and print for me and expand to fit that size. Go ahead and go back here. Well, I'll just leave that alone. Our paper type we can leave at plain, but if we have special papers loaded in the machine that we'd like to be able to print to, thick papers for cardstock or anything like that, I can select them here, and I can select an input tray as well. I can do these in combination with each other. In most instances, if you have a special paper setting, like a thick paper setting made on a tray, all you need to do is select the paper type. As long as there's only one tray with that paper type, that's where your job will pull from. Keeps things fairly simple. Another thing I'd like to mention as long as we're in here is if you look at the thick settings in the Ricoh driver, it's going to give you a weight that applies to each of those thick settings. This is fairly important because if you don't choose the correct thick setting for your paper, you may find that the toner doesn't adhere to your paper well, and you end up with print that peels off the paper or isn't quite dark or saturated enough for you when you look at your print job. This setting that is notated next to each of the thick settings here is a gram weight. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to most people. We're used to looking at a ream of paper and seeing a bond weight, 28-pound bond, 32-pound bond. If you look right next to that bond weight on the ream of paper that you're using, you will see a gram weight as well. It's just printed in very small numbers, typically to the right or just below the pound weight of the paper. Again, if you need help with this, please give us a call. We'll be happy to come out and give you a little assistance. The Layout tab lets us do multiple sheets on a sheet. So this is a little bit different than the setting directly below it, which is two-sided. You'll remember if you watched the copy video, we talked about this from a Ricoh perspective. These two settings sometimes get confused for one another. So my Layout tab here is about combining pages on a single sheet. That means rather than one page on one sheet, I would have, in this instance, 4 small thumbnails all on one side of one sheet. If I want to make my job two-sided, I'm going to do that just below here in the two-sided setting. So my settings here are off, which is self-explanatory, and long edge or short edge. And again, we've talked in previous videos about the way that this works. Essentially, if we have a document that is set up with a long side binding, it means that we rotate that document around an edge and it is oriented the same way on both sides. Whereas, if we have a short edge or tablet style bind, we rotate that document around the short edge and the second side is upside down. This just depends on how you're going to bind or hold this document after the fact. 99% of the time, what you will want is the long edge bind on a portrait document. Again, questions, please call us. We can help with any of these more complex layout functions. You'll notice that your booklet and staple functions will also be applicable from here. We're going to go ahead and turn off our two-sided setting so I can show you your basic booklet setting. So our booklet setting is basically just a pagination. What that means is I have in my application, whether it's Word or Publisher or whatever it might be, single pages set up one by one. This setting, the booklet setting, will paginate those pages. So it'll make it so that when you fold that document in half, all of your pages are in the correct reading order. You might also have a booklet finishing function on your device, a finisher that will actually staple it at the edges. That function would also be available from here. Now, let's go back to our one-click presets here. We talked about this briefly before. So if we do fairly frequently, let's say a job just like we have set up, maybe we want to send it to hold print, and we also print that on 11x17, and it's on thick paper. If we get tired of making these settings over and over again, we can simply make them once, and then we can come down to this bottom left corner and click Register Current Settings, and we can give these a name. We could also put a comment in to tell us a little bit about what that job was meant to do, if we need to. And now I have a setting that shows up in my one-click presets. Now, let's say I use this setting all the time. I'd like it closer to the top of this list. I can come down here to the bottom and click Manage, and I can take my setting and move it up. The factory setting will always retain the top position, but yours will be the next one available. Then when you open your print driver, you simply click on your preset and hit OK, and you're ready to go. One of the other fantastic things about the Ricoh print driver here is the ability to import and export these settings. So if the job that you've created is one that everyone in your company needs to be able to do, and you don't want them all to have to create this setting individually, you can create it for yourself, and you can choose to export it and save it out somewhere. We'll just save this on the desktop. Now, if I go to someone else's computer and I open the Manage One-Click Preset list, I can click Import, and I can browse back out to that file, which will be a proprietary file type. Mine already exists in here, so I won't import this, but you would simply hit OK, and then you would have that setting available on your computer as well. Very, very easy to share. There are many other settings in the Ricoh print driver, so the detailed settings takes us through a whole raft of other possibilities. We would love to come out and spend time with you on those. I won't drag you through all of them today because I don't really want to put you to sleep. But please be aware, if you have questions, if you need any more training, or if you just have individual questions, we're happy to provide training for you. If you have a Ricoh or Sharp copy contract through EECS, you have as much training as you would like to have for the length of that contract. So let us know. We can do a webinar like this and keep everybody social distanced, or we can come in with masks and do one-on-one training at your office or in small groups, whatever it takes to keep people safe. We appreciate your time today. Thanks for attending.